Would you agree with me that at times we are comforted by the scriptures and the words of Jesus, and other times we are challenged? We have in today's readings what we call apocalyptic images. Now, when we think of the apocalypse, we usually think of the end times, the end of the world, some great battle. The word apocalypse is from a Greek word that means a pulling back of the veil. So in other words, apocalyptic literature reveals something to us. We learn something from these images. Now, with the apocalyptic images in the Bible, we are challenged, and the images may even distress us. However, despite the challenging nature of these images, they nevertheless point to the hope that comes from faith in God. Using biblical imagery, Jesus describes the cosmic upheavals. The sun and moon will be darkened, and the stars will fall. In the prophets, such heavenly disturbances symbolize the earth-shattering impact of God's judgment upon a rebellious city or empire. But what do they signify here? On one level, Jesus is giving us a portrayal of the fall of Jerusalem and the temple. You see, for the Jews, the temple was a microcosm of the universe. Images of stars and constellations were embroidered on the temple veils. The 7 lights of the menorah represented the sun, the moon, and the 5 known planets. The temple was, if you will, at the center of the universe, the meeting point of heaven and earth, of God and mankind. Thus, its destruction would be a cataclysm of cosmic proportions. In this sense, Jesus' words were fulfilled in 70 AD, when the Romans reduced the temple to charred rubble and permanently ended the Old Covenant sacrifices. Ultimately, the imagery of heavenly chaos, a kind of undoing of God's work of creation, points to the end of the world. For the Gospel of Mark, these different levels of meaning are closely interconnected. The shattering events described are the events that precede God's ultimate victory. This ultimate victory takes place when Jesus comes at the end of time, when evil will be vanquished once and for all, and Jesus will be seen by all in his full power and divinity. Our biblical faith teaches us that the struggles of life will culminate in a massive confrontation between the forces of good and the forces of evil. This last battle will be universal in scope. The readings today speak of a time unsurpassed in distress, days of tribulation and of cosmic disorder. However, at the end of time, evil will be completely destroyed, and the reign of God will endure unchallenged forever. All the readings state that good will finally prevail over evil. Some of the images are frightening, but ultimately hopeful, because we see that the struggle against evil is temporary, and the outcome will be favorable and everlasting, thanks to the power of God. In order to avoid the fear and trembling when darkness prevails at the end of time, I want to share with you 2 important things that we can do. First is to live a sacramental life. The sacraments connect us to Jesus. In the sacraments, Jesus gives us his saving grace, which builds up our friendship with him. Mass, the Eucharist, and confession should be our 2 best friends. Second, we must give priority to the words and teaching of Jesus. Living by the words of Jesus must be the supreme priority in our lives, the number 1 priority, living by the words of Jesus. In the Gospel of John, Jesus makes this promise: "Whoever hears my word has eternal life. Whoever keeps my word will never see death. Also, apocalyptic images are timely whenever we find ourselves in the midst of the battle with evil and it appears that evil is winning. The apocalyptic passages remind us that good will be able to withstand evil thanks to the power of God. We would do well to apply this insight to our lives whenever we are faced with difficult times. For even in the midst of great suffering, we have good reason to hope because we know through faith that God will ultimately bring an end to each and every form of suffering and evil. We must not allow ourselves to ever despair, to be afraid. Instead, we remain hopeful, for all evil and suffering will pass, thanks to the power and love of God revealed to us in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ.